welcome to another session of Instagram Live for Expert Talk with me, Bhavya Desai. And if you've been following us already, then you would know that in the first episode we had spoken to Sudhir. In the second one, which was on wildlife photography, of course. In the second episode, we spoke to Dabu, wherein we focused a lot on celebrity photography and commercial photography and so on. So today, obviously being the third episode, we thought that it was time to focus on the wedding genre as well, and we're going to actually speak to a person who's really been doing some wonderful work, and that's Vishal Punjabi. He's basically the man behind the Wedding Filmer. And before I add him on, most of you already know this drill that if there are any questions that you would like me to ask him, then please just type it in, and what we will do is we will obviously try and focus on as many of those as possible. So without further ado, let me just quickly add him on and bring him on so that we can just start this Instagram live session.
How's it going, Bhavya?
Hey
Nice
Vishal,
to
how are
have you here.
you?
I'm doing good. How's it going?
Great, great. I hope everybody's safe and sound. Everything is great at
Everyone
home.
is, all my crew is tucked away. Some have gone to their
Super.
homes in different cities, but yeah, they'll be back when this is over.
Th- Absolutely. I guess all of us are really waiting for things to kind of just start so that we can immediately get back to work. Great.
True.
Okay, so before I start, of course, thank you so much, of course, Vishal, for doing this. It's always been great to interact with you and then, of course, have you on board as well.
Thank
And
you.
before I ask my first question as well, guys, for most of you who already seen a couple of episodes of what we've been doing, then if there are any questions that you would like me to ask Vishal, then please just go ahead and type it in, and I'll try and ask as many as possible. We'll try and go over as many as possible. So the first and the most obvious question, Vishal, from my end is that while many people already might be knowing this, but still, for the benefit of those who might not, can you just take us through the journey of the wedding filmer? I mean, how did that start, and how did you come up with that idea and all of those things?
For sure. I fell in love with the small format camera after I had an incident in life that changed in 2007. And
Right.
I've been working in Bollywood for 10 years as a director, visual effects supervisor, producer. I was doing advertising work, and I got fed up of being restricted with the big cameras, and I wanted to go back to small cameras. I remember, I don't think I've told anybody this story, but I remember I was talking to Rajkumar Hirani once, and he said, like I used to be a wedding videographer, and I came and did cinema, and sometimes I wish I went back and did wedding videography. And it was just at that same time I basically spoke to him because he was one of the few people who supported the idea of me doing this. I wanted to take everything I learned in advertising and do it for wedding cinema and kind of build
Right.
an industry of some sort where, because I knew I was limited with how much work you can do, but then I also knew that there were a lot of out of work filmmakers, there are lots of photographers who didn't have access to what we were doing or who didn't know
Right.
because they didn't have that exposure. They never worked in a professional field, but they had a passion for films. They worked in smaller towns. So the idea was to try and do something. And I think
Right.
clarity is important. You have to be very clear about your ideas when you start off. And I was very clear about what I wanted to make. I could see the films before I even made them. And at that point of time, nobody even understood what I was doing. I remember when I released my first big Indian wedding, it was really strange because people thought it was a movie that was releasing. They didn't even understand that it could be a wedding film. And up until then, I think before that, Indians were not very keen on the idea of a wedding film because they didn't understand what I was doing. They couldn't understand why they were paying so much of money for it. They didn't understand why they would have to invest in a wedding film when they were already investing in so much. And it
Right.
wasn't part of the culture. But I think with me coming in and making films with original music, we've kind of changed the way people perceive their memories and their weddings. And that's very
Right.
exciting.
Wow. Okay. So we'll touch upon the music bit a little later because I have a couple of questions which I wanted to focus on. But before I move on to the next question, some of our viewers are saying that the camera is a little close to you. So if you can just move back a little bit or move it a little far away, because they're not able to see your face so clearly. So guys, for the benefit
Is that
of
better?
listening, To me, it's seeming absolutely fine, but let's just wait to see what the other guys say. But guys, just on our behalf, a lot of times I've also been told that the sort of view that we get on our own screen, that's not the view that you guys are getting, because I've got a lot of screenshots where people send it saying that you're too close to the camera. So nonetheless, okay. So the next question I wanted to ask you, Vishal, was that, and this is something which was the first thing that really came to my mind because that was also something which I've not really noticed in this industry. So you're one of those few people, your company as well, the Wedding Filmer. You guys only focus on videos and not on still at all. So how did that decision come to be? Because it's very unusual to see people only doing one aspect and not the other.
Well, very simply, I'm not a photographer. I've been a filmmaker, so I wouldn't do photography or try and do something I'm not good at. Um,
Right.
that's something I'm clear about. I think it's like driving a car and flying a plane. They both are very important. You both need them. And sometimes the car is way more important than the plane because you don't need to fly that many times, but you need to drive to school and drive to work. Having said that, the skills required for both the jobs are different. Not that one is harder or one is easier, one is different or one is not, or one is less important. I feel, in fact, if you ask me, I think photography is slightly more important because it's there for everybody to see. It's on your camera. But I would rather stick to what I'm really, really good at than doing things that I'm not really good at, and trying to sell it to someone just to make a quick buck. I guess.
Understand.
And I think understanding that, the good thing about the coronavirus is that what's going to happen is that a lot of people who are not very good at what they do, they get weeded out because by default, events will tend to be smaller, which is a nicer thing because the weddings will be more intimate. I will get a chance to make films cheaper and smaller with a smaller crew, therefore having lesser footage, therefore spending less time editing it. The good thing about the coronavirus as well is that it's given us this time to finish all the work that we have left pending. So when it's over, we can hit the ground running with new, fresh ideas which we've developed, new plans for execution of films, and new structures and new formats we can make with new crew. That makes it so much more exciting. The benefit of that is that a lot more brides can do what we want because I don't think the capturing of the memory itself will change. I think the structure of the Indian wedding will change. I've seen it change very slowly over the past 10 years, but now
Right.
because of such a rapid change in society, we will also see a rapid change in the way weddings happen, which is an amazing thing.
Right, right. So, in fact, that's also one of the things that I mean, it's great that you brought this part up. The reason is because, for someone who's really starting out in this industry, for example, uh, weddings are something which are, I mean, they're very seasonal, of course, not for someone who's as established as you are. But then, how do people go about that aspect where when it is not really season time, when it's not really wedding time? Then, what exactly do they focus on during the other times? Leaving aside not only COVID, even otherwise, when the situation normalizes and everything returns to normal. So, what are your suggestions? What would your tips be for those?
I think we're fortunate. In fact, what we were doing this year was opening a studio in the West. I mean, what we would do normally is that we would do as many weddings as we can during the wedding season and then save for the rainy days when you know that there are going to be months where you're not going to be working. But we use that time to develop new softwares. We use that time to better our skills at what we do,
Right,
research better technology, spend more time on the edits of the films to ensure that they're the best they can be, spend time
right,
creating music for the films that we do, spend time with each other because when it's wedding season, we don't get time to spend with each other. We tend to travel so
right.
much that we're barely in Bombay. So there's that to do. But this year, what we were doing was we were opening up in the West because the nicest thing about um, India and the West is that when it's season here, it's off season there because it's winter. And when it's off season here in the monsoon, it's summertime there. And everybody wants that beautiful June wedding. So we get a chance to go to the West and we'd like to then open up a studio in New York or in Brooklyn. And we had full plans of doing so. And we were in talks with lawyers and getting the whole legal thing sorted out. But then this coronavirus happened. Um,
Right.
but we're spending this time retweaking our efficiency. So it's really nice to do that because I'm seeing a lot of things that we can do so much better. And we've not had this time before. And I think this time is a blessing.
Right, right. So, I mean, I think, yeah, I think it's also a time that most people are really looking to introspect. And then I guess when you're really tied down or confined to a specific geographic location, so then you do tend to think a lot about what you want to do and what you can do in order to improve and of course innovate and do something interesting. So one of the things that one of our viewers is asking is that. How do you approach your wedding, which is basically Rishabh, and he's asking me, how do you approach a wedding and how do you capture that? It's a very stereotypical question, but that I thought that's the first one that I'll take from one of the viewers, and then I'll come back to one of the questions that I have as well.
I think you shouldn't approach a wedding from a point of view of a format. I think you should approach a wedding from a point of view as a human celebration. When you walk in, there are different kinds of people celebrated differently, and everybody has a different story. No two people have the same. I know it's a very stereotypical thing to say, but it is very true.
Right,
Some people, the benefit in India is also you have the love marriage and the arranged marriage, and that itself tells you a whole lot about the couple and their families. How if it's arranged marriage, for example, the parents would have a lot to say about why they chose this girl and why they chose this boy. And the bride and groom will have a lot to say about what they're looking forward to,
right,
and what they'd like to build and what they saw in each other for them to take such a bold decision. Whereas a love story would be more about the bride and groom and their story and how they met and their friends and how that story came together. So the approach of the film and the mood of the film and the treatment of the film straight away
right,
is very different. So I think you'd always approach it from the most grassroots level and ask yourself this one question: Who am I shooting? Um,
right,
we tend to forget to ask ourselves the most basic things sometimes. And how did they meet? And what is their story? And how best can I bring that out into the film? So when you walk into a place, when I enter an event, the first thing I do is look around and I see how tall it is, how high it is. Can I or can't I fly a drone there?
right,
Is it day or is it night? Are there candles or are there like LEDs? Um, what is the space like? Is the stage central or is the stage against a wall? What is the seating like? How much space do I have between the people and the seating? And looking at all these
right.
plans, there's no one correct way. But obviously, you feel inspired by doing different things. And then at that point of time, you stand there and you take those decisions. I think your ability to take those decisions um, and think on your feet of new and fresh ideas is what makes you special.
Right, right. So, I mean, I'm sure that I think with the amount of experience that of course you've amassed, and by the way, of course, congratulations on completing 10 years in the
Thank you.
industry as well. So,
That's quite
that's great
special.
work as well. Yeah, absolutely. In those 10 years, I mean, I'm sure there must be a lot of moments which really must have really stuck to your mind, and of course, they've brought back a lot of memories. So, can you highlight like three? I know it's difficult to choose. I know every wedding is special and things like that. But I'm just saying that can you give us three instances which have really stuck to your mind and they've really moved you as such whenever you've been covering something?
I think the first time, well, not all of them have been positive. Some have been negative. Some have been positive. The three things
I
that
will
have
come
really
to that, by
changed.
the way. I will
Yeah.
come to that as well. I do have a
So
question on that as well.
Yeah, so no, I think the first one would be when I released a film called Heartbeats, which was my friend's wedding, which I had shot. And I didn't, for the life of me, understand what was happening at the time because I couldn't understand why a film like that would go so viral, why it was being
Right,
appreciated so much. I mean, I know it was nice, and I figured people who were getting married would like it. But
right,
for that kind of reaction, people were crying and weeping and writing to us and asking us. It was overwhelming, so overwhelming. Our website crashed. We didn't know what to do with Facebook, and I was very new at all this. It wasn't something that I was like looking at every single day, like trying to work. I was
right,
trying to figure out what to do and like play it by the ear. I think it just grew so exponentially that I didn't know what to do. So that was amazing. Um, the second thing that really changed my perspective and how I get married and I mean how I shoot weddings is in 2014 or something. I think I was hacked and my email accounts
okay,
were hacked by one guy who came and worked with us, and it was a really horrible time because for 6 months we didn't know, we couldn't get any emails. Our emails were being deleted, and it was a horrible time. 6 months later, we found out we were being hacked, and we filed an FIR case against that that man, not gentleman.
mm,
Um, it came in the papers. It was about recall pictures and Rona Khati Ramani, and
right,
there was a whole article about it. There was an FIR, there's a charge sheet, there's a court case going on, and it kind of shook my whole understanding of what I would do in the wedding space, because this person came from a workshop that I was doing. The whole idea was to try and create jobs. The whole idea was to try and make sure that enough people can get exposure into something like this and train them, make them think differently, make them understand the approach so that they can do something original. But sadly, this happened. So that kind of shook us. Also, like it came to a point where we were sitting in the studio for 6 months, and I was thinking of closing down because I'm like, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Because we'd get inquiries and we'd get bookings, and then we'd talk to the bride, and then the next day the emails would go missing. And it was a very scary time for us, and it kind of
Right.
changed. It kind of changed the whole way of how I looked at security and how I looked at how I treat the people who work with me when they leave, and we had to change passwords. Because before that, there was a lot of trust and there's a lot of understanding of how it works when somebody works with you, and then you suddenly realize, oh man, it's a very bad world out there.
Right.
Um, I think the third thing that changed for us was when we did Virushka's wedding. I was with Joseph and Tina from Shadi Squad, and I remember that breakfast that morning after, I think we were sitting down together and we were all having breakfast, and Joseph Radhik and me and Tina were looking at all our Instagram feeds, and they were going mental, they were exploding, and people were going crazy, and we just realized what we had done, and Joseph was showing us pictures, and I was showing them videos, and all the three of us just sat there, and I remember the sun was shining, and the feeling of satisfaction and gratitude that we had at that point of time was really nice, because we witnessed something very special, and um, it changed again my whole outlook, and it came at a time when I think we needed it the most, and
Right.
it was a nice surprise. So that changed our whole course again, of what we do. So
Okay,
yeah.
that's great. So you were also talking about, I mean, not all memories are pleasant, of course. And then so one thing I wanted to ask you is that, every wedding, every situation, scenario has its own experiences,
Hmm.
and not things don't always go as per what you plan. So in such certain circumstances or scenarios, how is it that you actually handle yourself and, anybody who's actually starting out in this industry, or anybody, for all the wedding photographers who are out there, how do you tackle that situation and still move on and continue to do that same level, deliver same level of quality and work despite these sort of challenges that you might face?
And it's true, because it does hamper the quality and the kind of work we can do, because then you're working with a team of people who are instinctively trying to not be productive, or trying to stop you from doing what you're
Right,
doing, or not
right,
respecting the work you do. So I've worked with wedding planners, for example, that when they don't pick you up from the airport, or you get onto a location and you don't get a room for 10 hours and you're waiting for a room, because you've gotten there early and check-in is at 2, but they've not provided for an early check-in. And they don't help you either in the process, so you're waiting there for a long time. You've gone to places where they don't provide you with food, or they don't provide you with proper accommodation. They don't tell you about the events. They're clueless themselves because they don't know about the events. There are lots of people who are in this business for the wrong deal. They're in this business to make a quick buck. Um, and most of these people, I think, will be weeded out eventually, because now it's going to come to a point where only the real talent would be able to survive. Only people who are really good at their jobs, who are trained at their jobs, because planning as well has a lot to do with hospitality and training and your approach and how to deal in with difficult situations, with difficult vendors and difficult guests. And um, I strive for excellence. I am a creative person, and I wouldn't take mediocrity for. It's the reason we're so good. I think I would get upset if a rider of mine is not met, and we end up on a space and we don't have a place to keep our equipment. We don't have a power source to back up our gear and charge our batteries and charge our equipment. And we don't have a proper place to come back and regroup and replan and dump our footage safely and repack our gear. And these things are important for us to work in a certain way. And they're very small, they're not very big things. But we do have a rider. And most of the times, I think
mm,
you'd want to choose and work with people who are good at what they do and who know
right,
what they're doing. And I'd rather choose and not work with people who are really bad at what they do, and
right.
who are not planned and who are in this literally just to make a quick money. I've seen event planners that sell events to random to people, and those events don't even make sense. They don't fit the schedule. They don't fit the timing. They're just doing it because they want to make some more money. Um, there's some really horrible things that happen. I think, like
Right.
most industries, like in construction, there's some really bad construction companies that take people's money and run away, and there's some really good construction companies that make some state-of-the-art buildings really efficiently. I think what I'm looking at working towards now for this future decade is looking at working with people who care about what they're doing. It's evident from the work that I do that I do care about what
Right.
I do, and the people who work with me all care very passionately, if not as much more than me, about what they do. Which is why the work speaks for itself. The musicians I work with, the composers
Absolutely.
I work with, the cinematographers I work with, they give their life for each other and for me and for the work they do. And that is, I think, the credibility, and it's also the reason why we're consecutively so good for the past 10 years. Um,
Right.
when it comes to that big Indian wedding, I think there are only a handful of people. There's like the Wedding Design Company or the Shadi Squad, or there's Aditya Motwane, or just very few companies in the country that can actually handle with respect and dignity and design and
Right.
aesthetic and also the training that is required to execute such a project. And nowadays, you
Right.
have lots of random people who are in it just to make just literally just to make money. They
Right.
get trainees from colleges. They're like 18-year-olds to be like hosts and hostesses and assistants and hospitality experts. But these guys are poor things. They're clueless. They don't know what to do, and they've all got stars in their eyes, and they're there. And you'd rather work with somebody who's worked with trained staff, who know what they're doing,
Right.
who know how to deal with difficult situations, and that's what a big event
Right.
for a professional wedding call would take. A
Right.
wedding
So, but
photographer, yeah, sorry,
right. So,
go for
no,
it,
no,
yeah.
please. Yeah. So, in fact, do you think it's not just the mindset of the wedding planners or whatever? Unfortunately, that's also the mindset of the people or the customers and clients as well. Because we also, as a brand, have been fighting this battle for the longest time to ensure that photography it really gets looked at as an art form. I think
Mm.
it has definitely come a long way, and one of the unfortunate scenarios is where wedding industry or the genre wedding is one place where people always still continue to believe that okay, it's a place where people are just going to stand in front of the stage, they're just going to basically take pictures, they're going to shoot something, they're going to have some behind the scene shots. Do you think that's a trend and a mindset that still needs to be changed from a lot of customers as well? It's not just the planners.
So I think different cultures and different traditions have different aesthetics, and it's okay. What I do, for example, is not everyone's cup of tea, and I fully understand that. I know a lot of people who may look at my wedding films and be like, it's nice, but it's not for me. It's too much. Like, I'm not so open. I can't talk about my emotions so much. Or I don't want to have such a big wedding. I want to have a court marriage. And there's no right or wrong. It's perfectly fine. And I think that's what makes this world so beautiful, right? There are different people who can do different things. For me, I choose to work with couples who appreciate my work as opposed to, I don't think I've ever sold my film to someone. It's not something you can sell. It's not something you can go to somebody and say, oh, you have to get me. I will do it better than this person.
Right.
Because it's I may or may not, I don't know. It's, do you like the work I do? Are you able to give me that much love so I can give it back to you? That's what makes a good wedding film. So if somebody would come to me and say, okay, we'd like you to shoot our wedding film, I'd be like, okay, so tell me about you and tell me how I can make you, and tell me about your wedding, tell me how you met him, and I'll see what I can do to make your wedding film happen. When are you getting married? Am I available? And then once they tell me about the wedding and how many people they're having, we give them a budget and then we ask them, is this okay for you? Is it something you can afford? Because if it isn't, then we'd not be able to take it further. And if it is affordable, then we take it further and we explain more to them about how we work. And if that is okay with them, then we go ahead and we sign the contract. So there's a lot of
Right.
meeting and discussion and understanding of what we want
Absolutely.
because this happens once and it's going to last for life. So you want to make sure you get it right and you don't want to do this just for, you know.
Absolutely. So, in fact, one of our viewers is asking a very interesting question, and
Hmm.
I will tie that question up with something that I'm also wanting to ask. Is that, there are some projects, even we, for example, as a brand as well, there are some projects which you do for obvious commercial work, for commercials, and then there are some which you really do just to satisfy your creative zeal, where, of course, no amount of, even if it's at break even, then you'd still take it up because you really like it. You have the passion to do something really creative. So, how do you balance that out? Because not always do you get that project which is really going to satisfy your creative zeal,
Hmm.
and then it's not always going to be a commercial win-win sort of a situation. So that is my question. And
Hmm.
in follow-up to what one of our viewers is asking is basically Saundir Ranjan, hi to you as well. He's asking that would you ever do a simple or a minimal wedding which has no scale, something like which is in a village or something of that sort?
For sure. In fact, I have just done a wedding, which was in a very small town called Murtal. It was really beautiful. Hi, Akshima, if you're watching. She usually watches these shows. She's a very beautiful bride who wrote into us with a very heart-touching story about she was diagnosed with a degenerative disease, and her dream was to have this wedding video. And she wrote into us, and I was saying I'd be more than happy to do so. And we went in there and we filmed it for her. We didn't charge her any money because we found beauty in her story and somebody who
Wow.
really wanted it and somebody who really needed it. to make their lives that much happier. So me and my crew went in and we filmed it. And I think putting yourself out there and looking for those stories and actively chasing them, investing in them, is not, it does cost money. We'd make music for it, we'd edit it, we'd use our time and effort and energy to do it. And I think in doing something like this, you'd only do it because um, apart from the good karma it generates for your business, it's also something you can use to showcase the work you do, because sometimes the best work that I have done is work that I can't show anyone. Some of the nicest work that I've ever created remains personal and will remain personal for eternity, because for the people we've done them for are so private, they wouldn't want to be known, or they wouldn't want their footage out there for them to see that, oh, we've got this. But it is really beautiful footage. So I think sometimes you need to do projects or you need to do work for artistic pleasure, and also it helps you in marketing as well. So it is a good investment if you look at it as somebody who's starting off a business.
Right, right.
It's what I did in the beginning. My first wedding I did for 50,000 rupees, and I invested my own money from my own pocket to finish that film and pay the editor and do sound on it and take it online and do grading on it and try and make it look as nice as I possibly can. Only because I
Right.
knew it had potential, and I knew that there was clarity that it could be beautiful one day.
Right, right. So, I mean, I can clearly tell, of course, that, and whenever we talk, I can understand that you're so passionate about those sort of work that you do and the sort of things that you create. I mean, it's just clear. It just takes 5 minutes to speak to you to understand that it really shines through. So what is the level of transparency that you would kind of keep with your client as such? The reason I ask this is because one of our viewers also is asking this question, who's Ajay. He's actually asking that what if you lose your customers' data? And I've been in this situation where it's actually happened to me, by the way, where somebody that we had given some commission work to, and they lost our data, and then it took us like almost 4 or 5 months to kind of get it from them. So he's saying that in case if we lose the customer's data and it's their memories, then how do you tackle that situation? What do you answer them?
Oh my gosh, I would just, I mean, hearing it itself makes me feel my mouth just went dry. And as a company, I think we've invested very heavily in data protection. It's something we do not take lightly. In all the years of working in the wedding business, we have never lost data. And to say this
Right,
confidently is a big relief. We've had the benefit of having the guidance of Neil Sadwelkar, who is a digital data specialist in India. He was responsible for changing Bollywood's film to digital. When I came back from Africa and I wanted to go digital back with Red Chilies, there was a lot of pushback from everyone, the cinematographers, the technicians, the post production guys. They're like, no, don't go digital. We're not ready for it yet. But Neil kind of helped me push everyone over the edge so we could go digital finally, and we shot our first film digital together, and that was
right,
really nice. And he had the confidence in me, and I had the confidence in him to know that he understood the importance of what I was doing. He's like, this is wedding footage. So we've got rate systems in place. We've got systems in place where our data is backed up in 3 different locations. We've got systems in place where we use SSDs and really fast ones to back up data on location. We use fresh cards every time, and we kind of look after our cards and keep them in dehumidified conditions. And our tables are made a certain way, our hard disks are made a certain way, and the whole office and studio is designed in a certain way to make sure that none of the tables have drawers, so they don't give shock to the drives, and small
right,
things like that make it very efficient for you to protect your data. Because I think if your workflow doesn't have data protection as number one, do not start wedding photography or videography. If you're going to do wedding videography and photography, the first thing you need to do before investing in a camera is invest in your hard drives. Because I can't imagine what life would be if we lost data. I
right.
can't.
But in a case
I'm
if you do,
speechless. There are some data. There are some. So it depends. Have you lost the drive? If you've lost the drive, then try finding it. And if it's crashed, then I think there's some data recovery softwares that have worked for us in the past. Lassie have a very powerful data recovery software. So going to them and using them, they come and they pick up the drive from you. They've come to our studio, picked up the drive whenever a drive has crashed because we've lost data. But the thing is, because we use RAID systems, and even if a drive crashes, we have all the data intact in real time immediately without any data loss or any time loss. Because also these
right,
things don't just affect data and quality of the film, but they also affect efficiency of the film, the amount of time lost. Now,
right,
each person's, so when you try and quote, if you're starting out, you have to understand one thing, that your time is money, And the more time you have, the more hours in a day you can work. And because it's creative work, there's only that much hours you can do because you would burn out after some time. You have to give yourself and pace yourself. So your technicalities of it should be very efficient. Your data, your color correction, your calibration, your cables, your camera, your lensing, all of that shouldn't give you problems because then you get the time and energy to think creatively and work. And those little things don't come into play. So
Right.
it's something to think about when you're investing.
Right. So, I mean, if can you take us through the process? I mean, can you take us through the process of like once, say, for example, you've already signed on and you're going to shoot this wedding. Then, for the benefit of the viewers, can you take us through that process from the planning to the execution and what happens in post processing? Because that's also extremely important. It's not just about that specific day, but it's the whole process of how the journey rolls over.
Yeah, I was telling someone today, you plan, but then plan knowing your corners and plan within a circumference. So each wedding, you're in a situation where you have to think on your feet. So you can go in with a plan. So I think breaking down what kind of equipment you will use and why you will use. So that would depend on, again, the location, the timing, the space, and your treatment for the film. As a director, as a filmmaker, you would go in with a certain kind of treatment. These are things you would want to ask yourself as a filmmaker. These are things that you want to ask
Right.
yourself before going in to film a wedding. When you're at the wedding, then how you break your crew down in different situations. For example, different events have got different structures. And I think how you break your crew down, how you make your shot breakdowns, how you capture a certain event. Like, is it like a Filmfare Award where you've got Jimmy Jibs and cranes and drones and reaction cams on steady cams, or do you have, or is it like a haldi which is at home where you have two cameras? And then if that's the case, where you're going to position them? Are you going to position side by side, behind each other, in front of each other, next to each other? These are all reasons. And then what lenses you would give would again decide on how you would want to treat the scene. How many people are there? Is it like two, three people, or is it 20 people, or is it 200? That would again
Right.
decide the kind of lensing you would use.
Right.
Then the filming of it, then the protection of the data of it, the sound processing of it, and you bring it back, and then the fine process of understanding and brainstorming with the team, coming up with storylines, coming up with edit patterns, and coming up with really cool ideas for music, and coming up with amazing transitions, and coming up with ways to which we can engage each other first so that we can engage other people. And we challenge each other all the time. And it's amazing to see. Like the people who work with us, Deepak and Akshay and Gagan and Jenish and Harsh. And when these guys come together and they start brainstorming about ideas, it's something else when you see them. And then the work they do right now, it's spectacular.
Right. So, but do you agree that it's a lot about also people management skills, not just internally, of course, your team as well, but also in terms of your clients as well, the extended family, the friends, and so on. How do you manage all of that?
So I have one of the best producers in the world, and I'm so grateful for her, Neha Sharma, who basically loves what she does. She's a feisty, energetic, amazing, creative powerhouse, um, who helps me all the time, and is the yin to my yang, and kind of helps balance out my craziness and my like everything. So every time I go crazy, she holds me back, and it's really nice to have that. And she also helps me in talking to friends and talking to family because she loves talking. For example, talking to brides' fathers. Nobody does it
Right.
better than Neha, just because she's so amazing. Like, so she positions herself as the daughter, and she starts talking to her father, to the bride's father, like it's her own. And every time, right, I wait for it, and I actually wait for it to see her cry. And when I see her cry, then the father starts crying, and I'm like, every time it happens, and I'm just like, it's heartwarming to see somebody love her job so much that nothing would come in between what she does for a living and her.
Right. Wow. One of our viewers actually is asking, and that's a very nice question as well. Sanat Pratap is actually asking that do you write a storyline for every wedding while you interact with the clients multiple times, for instance, whether a groom or a bride?
No, then thankfully I have God for that to write the storyline. I come up with concepts, I guess. I come up with ideas. I've come up with a very simple rule about the music that we use, the lines that are said, the action that happens within the shot should all have a certain synergy between them. And once that happens, you create magic. And how long you can sustain that magic for is the beauty of what we do as wedding filmmakers. So the idea is
Understand.
always to strive to get a balance between the three: the dialogue that's spoken, the music that's played, and the action that's taken. It's
Understand.
the perfect threesome.
Like, what's the best piece of advice that you've received from someone who is from not in this industry?
Um,
Or rather, let me just reframe that. What's the best piece of advice that you've received from someone you least expected it from?
the best piece of advice I least expected it from. Good question. Nothing's coming to my mind as sharp as I can right now, but I think quite recently, someone told me, "Let it be, Vishal. Um, you're above all of this nonsense." Um, but yeah.
Right, right. Okay. Have you, Mohit is actually also asking that have you made your dream wedding yet, or it's still something which you're waiting to do, or it's in the works, or you've not come
No, I
across
think
that one?
I think it's always the last wedding I shot. Like the last wedding you always film always had tends to be the nicest wedding you filmed. But I think the dream wedding is uh, it's hard to say because some of them have actually been very dreamlike. We've done some weddings and we look back, and the last one I did, which was with Vandana and Aditya Motwane, and this was for a bride called Vipasha and for a groom called CJ, and he was South Korean and she was Punjabi from America, and they had the most beautiful wedding. And then when I was talking to them and I spoke to her father, I realized how much love for life these people have and how much
Right.
gratitude they have for where they are right now. And when you see people like that get married and the way they got married and the joy they had on their faces when they did, it was just, it's infectious almost. And then you come back inspired to do something different for them. And I think with that wedding as well, and I saw the way they were, um, and I saw the way my crew were, no matter what was happening around us, we stayed focused on trying to get the best out of that wedding for them. And we did a really good job. I was quite happy
I
with it.
understand. Right. I just want to come back after this question that I ask. I want to come back to you a little bit about, creativity and inspiration and plagiarism and stuff like that. But before
Mm.
that, I'll just take in a question from one of our viewers, Niklesh. He's saying that, which is a pure practical and more of an execution sort of question. What is your delivery time once you finish shooting the project? Then if you can just tell us a little bit about that.
I think it varies from when we are booked. If you book us right before your wedding, chances are we already have a long line of list of people waiting for the edits to happen before yours would actually come at the table. So it could take as long as 6 months. Um, but I think with the benefit of the coronavirus, one of the advantages of having something like this is that we've been able to clear all our backlog now. So come end of
Right.
May, we would have nothing on our tables at all. And when we come back to editing again, we'd be able to edit with full ferocity, and that would be really interesting.
Right.
That's how long it takes. Yeah, but I think
So,
from beginning to end, when you say if I'm looking at me coming back after the coronavirus and going to a wedding and coming back on an empty table, it could take as long as 2 months for a wedding film because of the processes it goes to. And I think the longer you take on a wedding film, the nicer the film will be. Having said that, if the wedding was over a day and it was a small event and it was just one day, it would happen over a week. It could happen over a few days as well if it was just that one ceremony we were capturing. But if it's a 3 day,
right.
4 day, 5 day extravagant event, it could take up to 2 months to edit because of the size and the scale and the number of cameras and the music that we go and put into it, and then the sound correction and the color correction and the final mix and the mastering. So by the end of it, when they watch it, it's like a movie. It's not just
Right.
it's not just
Right.
a exported video clip edited on iMovie.
I understand. But what happens in situations or scenarios where, say, for example, of course, I hope it never happens to anybody, but what happens in certain situations where probably if the client's expectations have not been met, so how do you tackle that sort of a situation?
So that's where clarity comes in. It's very important to have clarity. The one good thing that I have about my company is that for all the brides and grooms we film for, all of them are really happy with the films that they've received, and they have because they have been made with a lot of love. And that is where the selection process as well comes in. Is to do you do it for people who understand what you do, because it is subjective. Most art forms are. So being able to select who you do so, and that's where clarity comes in again, and being honest about what you can and can't deliver, because there are lots of people who do this just to make money, and at the point of time will take money to get the booking, but when it comes to time to deliver, they don't. Like, and then there's that whole thing about professionalism and what to do as a photographer and what to not do as a photographer, or what to do as a videographer and what to not do as a videographer. If you're untrained, and you don't have the experience, and you're in this only for the money of it, then you're obviously going to do the wrong things when you're there because you don't really care.
Right, right. For how does someone who's actually starting out in this industry, from someone who's basically now chosen the wedding genre and would like to definitely continue this aspect, so how do they get to building up that portfolio that they can and reach that certain level so that they can kind of do the sort of work that you are doing currently? What would your advice be to those people?
And they say practice makes perfect, but having said that, just practice alone, there are two types of practice. It's not just any kind of practice. I can learn a song today and learn the guitar and play the same chords every single day and practice my guitar, but not get any better. Um, but if I actively practice and I try and push myself to do things that I'm not good at, to play the chords that I can't play,
Right.
to push myself further every day, I will then in time get better. So in order to actively practice, it's important to have an active coach to help you practice. This goes for anything. You could be tennis. You could be a tennis player. And most kids play tennis when they're school. They go for tennis lessons, and then they play tennis all their lives, and they remain at a certain skill. They never get better than that skill. It's only when they start actively practicing with a coach who can train them, who can push them every day, who can push them further every day, will they be able to get better at what they do. And I think hard work, diligence, no shortcuts, no steroids to get better at playing tennis. Um, that makes you good at what you do, and that is sustainable. That's something that can make you grow over time. I didn't get to where I have gotten to overnight. I have worked for 20 years very hard. First as an assistant, I have gotten beaten by Farah Khan on the sets, and she's chased me with a microphone. I have. I've swept floors. I have slept in studios nights and days. I've subtitled films and sat and watched films, lasers being done. So all the work has been put in, the hours have been put in before I have gotten to where I've gotten to. So their experience does count for something. I have made so many mistakes in the past, it's not funny. The idea is to learn from them and not repeat them. But the idea is not to, and share them with people so that they can learn from them as well. I think that's
Understand.
important.
Right. Right. Let's be honest that it's this genre, especially, I think there is no other genre which is as competitive as the wedding photography or filmography genre, right?
No, that's not true. I think most of them are. I've seen films and I've
Really?
seen cars and yeah, I've seen
Right.
corporate
No, no,
espionage and banks and it can go quite competitive. This world is a very competitive world you live in.
absolutely. I do agree with you. Absolutely, I do agree with you that aspect as well. But with 70% of the industry in photography, of course, circling around weddings, then actually, I mean, there's bound to be a lot more when it comes to only this genre. I mean, that's my perception, absolutely. But in this competitive world, how is it that it's very difficult to get inspired, one. And number two is that people kind of look at inspiration in a different way. They sometimes just plagiarize things like, for example, the instances that you were talking about earlier as well. Uh, you know, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? How does that work? And I mean,
See, ideas are for everyone. I think there's a very clear difference between plagiarism and inspiration. There's a big group going on Wedding Sutra, which is a shady blog, and all of them are talking about how I took the Last Supper image and I plagiarized it. Now, there's a thing about inspiration and plagiarism is you take something that exists, you take an art form like Da Vinci painted a painting in the 18th century, 17th century time, a long time ago, 12th or fuck knows when. Um, I wanted to recreate that and make it a contemporary photograph, change the art form, change the decor to represent who I am, and to represent my team and what we do, which is dress in the way we go and dress when we go for weddings, have wedding decor laid out the way we would want when we get married, and display my cuts with the architecture, the look, the lighting, everything about the wedding table, the feast that we had. There were discussions about whether it should be vegetarian, whether it shouldn't be, whether we should have a chocolate cake or a strawberry cake, and there was thought about the color palettes and what would wear, and we discussed it, and we came up with what I consider, in my opinion, is an inspired idea, which was executed very nicely, according to me. Um, Plagiarism is when I take Leonardo da Vinci's painting and I remove his name and I put my name there and say, this is my work. So, which is what people do. Some people take my work and they put their logos there and they go and show it to people and say, this is my work. Or some people take my work and show it. हम लोग ऐसे करके दिखाएंगे, हम लोग ऐसे करेंगे. So that is plagiarism. When you go and say, oh, ये हमने किया है, that is plagiarism and that is shady. I don't think that is acceptable by any standard. So understanding the difference between inspiration and plagiarism are very different things. To understand the difference between asking someone for permission and not, or taking some idea and lifting it off completely, or finding inspiration in something and making it your own. I recently started something called Wetflix, and I think Wetflix it's a take on Netflix, obviously from the name. The logo also suggested when you see it. It was a marketing thing that we were doing. Let's stay at home and watch wedding films instead of anything else because that's Wetflix. And this is the time where wedding films really come in handy because families get together and all the brides and grooms are sending us pictures of them watching their wedding films together with their families, and we've been sharing that. So I thought that was really clever. Now that is finding inspiration and making it satire, and obviously taking a take on Netflix and not make. We've not come up with we've not coined it Netflix and chill. We're very aware of that. I think finding inspiration and plagiarizing. Now taking Netflix, the word, and saying that I have made Netflix and I am going. That is plagiarism, and the understanding between the two is different. I think there are websites like Wedding Sutra that promote plagiarism, celebrate it, award it, think it's okay and it's fair and it's nice to do so. And I think in the world we live in, if you want good ideas to come and if you want to push the bar of excellence, then it's important to have the right coach. It's also important to have the right attitude, and it's also be very, very important to stay original, no matter how bad you are at what you do. At least then that
Right,
bad work is your work.
right. I understand. Right. Guys, before I move on to the next question, I'm really sorry. There are a lot of questions which are coming in, so I might not be able to get to all of them. And if I've missed any, then I'm really sorry. But, so the next one I actually want to ask, and I will circle back to this conversation again because I have a
Please
couple
do.
of more
I have
experience.
lots of
Yeah,
time.
yeah. So the next one I actually want to ask you is about music. There are a lot of
Mm.
people who are also talking about music, and I want to ask, do you compose every song which is part of the sort of films that you're making? Is that true, or is it, I mean, that's what I understand, and that's what my research, my team's research tells me. So I would
So
like to hear from you.
so I personally have only composed two songs, but
Right,
I have a bunch of composers. There's a beautiful composer I work with called Amar Khanda. He composed songs like Din Shagnada, which was the first song I ever made actually. Peer Vitu, which was used in Anushka Sharma's wedding video, which was a hit. I work very closely with Kingshuk Chakrabarti, who runs a company called the Music Factory, who was also my neighbor, who's
right,
also one of my dearest friends, who composed songs like Vikya, who composed songs like Meri Yadein and Ashiana, and so many beautiful songs. In fact, we're releasing a trailer tomorrow, and I'll give you a sneak peek of it after I hang up this call because I'm really excited about it. And it's, I think, one of the most beautiful songs we have ever made. It was written by Shelley, who's a very talented Sardar Punjabi lyricist, and it was composed by King Shuk, and Harshdeep Kaur sang it for me. Um, and it's, I think, one of the nicest wedding songs we've ever made. It's going to change the way again Sikh weddings are happening, and look out for it tomorrow because it's going to be quite amazing. And I think work like that is what we like to put out. I do compose music for films every year. Not I mean, my company composes music for films. We produce music. We have a label called the Wedding Film Music. We're in talks with Sony Music to try and market that music. Hopefully, things should work out, and
right,
we'd be able to put that music out there for people to start going. Because I feel like music again is one of those things that last forever. They don't die that easily. When you hear a song, it takes you back to that time. Every memory needs a melody, and every time you hear that melody, it triggers a certain memory within you. Kind of
right.
like your mother's food. When you taste it, you remember your childhood, or a smell from a certain place, you remember your school. Um, and music is very much like that. So music, I think, plays a very big role in what we do. It also makes it more challenging for us. It makes it different, and it's why I stand by what I say so much. Is because we go through great lengths. We spend a lot of money, time, effort, energy, and love, and give a lot of ourselves to what we do to make it original. Which is why I stand by saying that good work and original work is something that we should always look for.
I
Um,
understand. Right. But so in this case, then how does it work? Do you, once you've shot something and then you go back to the drawing board in terms of composing, your company composes? Or is it like whenever a thought comes to your mind, or if some idea comes to your mind or a concept, then you develop that song working with lyricists and, of course, the
I think
whole
it works both ways.
team?
The times when I have an idea and I say, okay, this is going to be a great song, and I start working on it without anywhere to use it. I just like the idea, and I think, okay, I've got some time. I've got the idea for a song. I sit with the lyricist. He writes it down. I sit with King Shok. We jam together. We comes up with the melody, or I come up with the melody. We sit together. Then he produces it. I love it. I don't think I've ever rejected a track he's ever made for me. He's so talented at what he does. And we put it together, and it's worked out beautifully. There are times, however, when a bride has come to me way before and says, "I'd like to sing a song, or I'd like to compose a song, or I'd like a song for my entry," and then I sit with them, and then I call them over to my studio, or I go and visit them where they are, or we Skype over the phone, and we talk about their love story. We talk about what they can do. If she's going to sing, then I make her sing for me, so I get a sense of her scale and her texture and her voice. Um, we then ideate based on that, and we try and come up with an idea on songs she likes, treatment she likes. Is it a cover or is it an original? If it's a cover, then it's because obviously she likes that song, or she's used it before, or they danced to it the first time, or it's the first song they heard on radio together in the car, or there's always a story attached to it. And if there isn't, then it's something she really wants to say, and she knows she wants to say it. She knows what she wants to say, but she also wants to sing it because it's been a lifelong dream to sing, and she's never had a chance to. And now that she's getting married, her husband to be or her father is making her do it because it's a dream she wants to pursue.
I understand, right? So one of our viewers actually is asking this pertinent question again, and that's why I'm actually going to take it up as well. So Mayur is asking, is that what do you tell people who really don't respect you or this field? Because I've actually seen a lot of these instances where a lot of people, photographers, and I'm talking about top photographers, they also do come to us and they always have asked us to highlight these sort of scenarios wherein they are not really being respected by the clients. For example, if they've reached on a shoot and they have just been brushed off by just saying, okay, fine, yeah, aap ye kar lo, yeah. So how do you deal with those sort of scenarios and how do you speak to them?
Yeah, no, it's happened twice before. I think when you're put in a situation where you don't have an option, I think twice, the only two times I've had to actually be like, oh my God, this is going to be a very difficult situation for us to film in, is then what you tend to do is you can't get close to the couple, you can't get close to the family, you have to be that fly on the wall, you can't be as friendly as you want, and you can't go in as close, and it's quite unfortunate when that happens. Um, I think the best thing you can do as a company or as an individual to protect yourself is put it in your clause to have a disrespect clause, especially if you have women on your crew, because there's alcohol at weddings and sometimes a man may misbehave. So that's never happened to us before, but it's always nice to put in your clause in your contract just to make sure that if there are women on your crew, they feel safe maybe. Um, I guess that would be the best option. But every day is a learning day, so I think with age, you also learn to react differently to situations. There are times when, as creative people, when you're working in a situation, if you really, like you called me passionate about what I do. So with passion comes a lot of fierceness and protectiveness and anger and all of that. If what I'm looking for and what I'm so passionate about doesn't work out the way I want to work out. So, for example, I'm standing there and I'm waiting for a shot for a very long time. And suddenly this photographer comes in scratching his bum, walking around, not aware that there's action going on, and he should be aware of his surroundings. And if you're a good wedding photographer and you are trained, you will be aware of your surroundings, and you won't be standing there in the middle of the action checking your shot. You would have a little more decency than that. Um, so things like that, like I've experienced times where a bride and groom are having a very intimate moment, or the bride is coming to the bride's mother has come to put the mang tika on the bride when she's getting ready, and the wedding photographers are behind and they are fast triggering it, and they're talking, but I can't hear what they're saying because there are three photographers around, all of them on a fast trigger, all of them flashing their cameras like paparazzi in a very intimate moment. Now, technology exists for you to have a silent shutter. Technology exists for you to have a zoom lens, and you're a photographer, you can always take your picture and move to the next location and take another picture, especially when the action is so intimate and it's not a big space. You just need one person, you don't need three people there. But in doing so, as videographers, we'd go in with one person, we wouldn't go in with three people, even though we're shooting to edit. um, as photographers, they go in with three, and that kind of hampers, um, and I think it's also inconsiderate to the people in front of them, to the people they're working alongside, and to each other. What tends to happen as well is when they deliver the projects to brides and grooms, they get 15,000, 20,000 pictures as photographs. And a bride and groom who have paid a certain amount of money and have had a certain kind of wedding are looking exasperated at those 15,000 pictures, being like, what am I going to do with so many pictures? The decent thing you can do is, select them, edit them, shoot with care. If you don't have the time to process them later, then shoot less and shoot more carefully and shoot and know what you're shooting is not a war zone out there. So things like that to think about. I think when you're shooting in Sindhu's situation is happening, for example, and it's a low light situation, learn how to focus, learn how to use manual focus, or learn how to use autofocus without triggering those laser lights on the face, because Literally, untrained photographers do that, and they come with equipment which they'll throw laser lights on people's faces just in the time when the action is about to happen. They get their photograph, but then the video then is ruined. And for some brides and grooms, that video means the world to them, and they've paid a lot of money for it. And it's only respectful towards not just me, but towards them as well, that they work with a certain understanding of what they're doing at least. That's how vision. And we work with many photographers who are excellent at what they do, like Simon Ekta, Joseph Radek, who know what they're doing, Shashank Isar, who are trained. They go in there, they have a certain temperament, they have a certain understanding, they have a certain bank of experience they can depend on when they're put in situations they don't know how to handle.
Right, right. What is that one? I mean, since you spoke a little bit about technology and things like that, a quick question came to my mind. What is that one thing that you can't survive without in your kit? And of course, that I mean, you can't choose a camera and a lens. Anything which is apart from these two things.
I think there's a new microphone I'm using. I'm going
Right,
to send you the link so you can post it on your website tomorrow, on your
right,
Instagram tomorrow. But I think with a with a with that microphone, it's really critical because it's by Sony, and it doesn't require any batteries. It plugs in straight to your camera. It also doesn't require you to keep checking your levels all the time because it has a great sensor for a great
okay,
auto mode. So if you put it once and you put it on auto and you kind of set the balance once, it kind of maintains itself. It has a great wind filter. It has noise cancelling. Best of all, it not just captures the sound of what's happening in front of everybody. For somebody who's doing interviews and you need decent pilot sound, it also records the sound behind the camera, giving you spatial audio. And it's digital sound, so it's really cool. It's also very light, and it doesn't have a wire that connects as well, so it's very compact, and it's small. So I say this because sound is so critical to capturing magic. Sometimes on a black frame, you've seen horror films sometimes, on just a black frame, the sound itself is important, is enough to make you feel scared. Or a voice that whispers is enough to make you feel a certain emotion. Um, and that's how powerful sound is. So how well you capture that sound, the microphone on the cameras we use are worse than the microphones on our phones. So they're not ideal for capturing a father talking to his daughter in an intimate situation. For that, you need a shotgun mic. So a microphone is something I wouldn't do without.
absolutely okay. So in terms of the processing as well, of course, I mean, we do a lot of. We also have an in-house team which does a lot of videos and stuff like that, and then everything is edited in-house. So one of the very important questions is that from an approach in terms of wedding as well, then do you already have a storyboard which is planned and these are the critical shots that you need? I know that there are certain shots that you definitely require, obviously, to put them in, but is there a storyboard attached to that, or do you go there and you try and capture as many B-rolls or A-rolls and all of those things, and
I
then
think
you
not
come
as
back and
many. I think not as many. It's storyboarding is limited to what you can do because it's more based for edited action, which is scripted. We're not scripting anything, so you don't really storyboard as such. You
right,
discuss ideas, you discuss them with your crew, and when we go there, we work our cinematographers that we work with. For example, Abhijit Datta, Kunal Singh. These guys are really talented. They have a knack of pointing their camera and framing for magic. I feel like Hojo is blessed. Hojo has got there's some cauldron of magic potion he must have fallen into when he was young because literally every time he points his camera and takes a shot and he shows it to me, my jaw drops. He is the reason why our films are so beautiful. I think when you look at our videos and you see the most beautiful shots, you see them there. Neha's strength is her ability to go into spaces, um, be invisible, and yet make it look like a movie. Kunal, for example, has got the energy of a racehorse who could film with tenacity, but he can film all day. He can film parties, and he has a strange way of moving the camera that no other cinematographer I've seen move, and is unique to him. Um, and therefore bringing a certain kind of magic to a sequence that I've never seen before in my life. And that's really
right.
beautiful to watch as well.
Understand. Right. So one of our viewers is asking a question, and of course, you can answer it if you are comfortable with this. And that's VAF basically is asking that for the music compositions that you guys do, does Wedding Filmer basically pay for whatever those compositions are, or they are on a revenue sharing model? And I completely understand for
No,
if
I didn't
you
understand.
are
You want
comf
me to share the revenue for it? So it depends. I think there are different songs. So some songs are owned by the client. Some songs are owned by me. Some songs are owned by the musicians I've loaned them from. I don't think there's one way of answering that specific question because each song is born differently. Some songs I have borrowed on license from King Shuk, who he's pre-recorded for someone else, but I felt is valid for this, and he's never used it before. And he's like, "Oh, I've composed this, and it's really beautiful." The idea is to use something that's original, that touches my heart, that I've never heard before, so that when I'm editing it, or when my crew is editing it, or when Janish, my editor, is editing it, when Arjun is editing it, he gets something original to watch. He gets something fresh to edit to. He doesn't get the same song to edit to, because then it becomes boring. It just becomes a format. And we don't want to create formats. We want to challenge ourselves every time. And music helps us do that in a big way. I find music constantly inspiring. It doesn't tire me. I listen to music all day. It's part of my life. It's part of my. I like to play music badly, but I still play it nonetheless. Yeah.
Right. Coming to the question in terms of creativity as well, Vishal. So I'm again getting some comments from some of our viewers that if you can just like move your camera back a little bit so that you can come. Perfect. That's great. Okay.
Is that
Okay, guys.
better?
I hope that's much better, guys. So if you are able to see him clearly and if you're able to get a good visual, then do let me know in the comments. But yeah, so coming to the creative aspect and in general about wedding films and so on. Um,
Hmm.
how do you develop that skill? I know that some people are born with it, some people are not born with it, but then some people tend to work on it. How do you develop that skill further and further? I mean, how do you get better at it?
I think we talked about this. We talked about the practice that it takes to get better at something. You need a active practice, and we remember we talked about this just now.
Right, right.
So where you actively practice something, and you try and push yourself to get. You don't do what you're comfortable doing all the time, because that would just be boring. You would get bored at the end of the day. Um, the idea is to try and push yourself to do things you're not very good at, if you want to get better at an art form. So whether it's, and that goes for anything, not just filmmaking, whether it's dance, music, cooking, or anything that you like doing. There's no point cooking the same thing over and over again. No, cause like you do that well, we all know that. But now push yourself to do something that you're not so good at, so that you can call yourself an all-rounded cook. Um, so
Understand.
that's what
Right.
makes you better.
Okay.
That's my logic as well.
I'm gonna circle back to the question about the there have been certain challenges that you faced, right, in when it comes to the industry in general, or the thoughts that you were basically having about plagiarism, and there are these groups which are kind of going around and they kind of talk. Uh, I mean, what do you really have to say to them in general? Would you like to address that? I mean, would you be comfortable with that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but I don't think I'd like to address it in any way. I just think that, I think beyond the point, most people who are on these groups and who say these strange things are people who take commission from each other, and sell bad work to each other, and try and sell bad work to clients, and unsuspecting clients that too, and it's really sad. But I think over time, what will happen with things like the coronavirus, they get weeded out anyways. They're not going to be able to sustain what they do, because it's not correct, it's not good. When it comes to like I said, when it comes to the big wedding, there are very few people who can do them well, and I think those are the people who would sustain themselves and who can do it. And I think the rest of these big shady wedding planners and wedding photographers who call themselves wedding photographers but actually are in this just to make money, they get weeded out by default. And the thing is, I have a long list of people who I don't want to work with now. I have, luckily for me, there are lots of people on these groups that also send me these things that they send, and some of them shock me. And I'm like, oh, so it's nice to know that these are the people I shouldn't be working with, and I would make sure that I don't associate myself with them, and they wouldn't ever get the benefit of having the wedding filmer represent a wedding that they have ever hosted or done,
Right,
because we just wouldn't. We'd
right.
also inform our brides and grooms and tell them that we don't want to work with these such people, because they're really shady people, and they,
Understand.
apart from taking commission, they're not honest. They don't respect work, and we've had really terrible experiences, and they hamper us from doing a good job, and that becomes a problem. So all these people on these groups who have actually said anything negative about us, um, I think they're all people who I have worked with in the past at some point or the other, or who are dying to work with me, and I've never done work with them because they're just so bad at what they do. What I have done is I have reprimanded them in the past for being naughty and being bad, and I think this is them being all like sulky and be like, how could he do that? When who does he think he is? Who I think I am is, I think I am one of the finest filmmakers in the country, and I have created this industry, and it is nice to know that I have done that. And it is nice to know that I also want to sustain doing it. I don't want to do weddings where, I think with this coronavirus, I've had a lot of time to think about what I would like to do. I wouldn't want to do weddings that are done for the wrong reasons. I wouldn't want to do weddings that wedding planners are doing for the wrong reasons. I wouldn't want to have animals at the weddings I film, and have them suffer. I wouldn't want to do weddings where there's colossal amounts of waste. I wouldn't want to do weddings where there's this classism that is evident. Um, because these are habits and things that I don't want to encourage, no matter how much money people make out of these things. I don't think it's about the money now. When we look around us, money is not really wealth right now. Looking at the world we live in, it's not about how much money you have. It's about how healthy you are, for example. And I think industry is a very strange word to use for something as common as weddings, because honestly, every single soul, most people in this world who are born will get married at some point or the other. And much like restaurants and food and cars and homes, there's different classes for everything. Um, I feel the kind of weddings I do and the kind of weddings I would like to do is not about the kind of money they have. It's always about the kind of people they are and how much they appreciate the art form of what I do. That is what defines us, and that is the reason why we are successful. It's not my talent. I don't think I'm supremely talented. There are lots of people who make films. Um, I think it's also the way we approach each film we do, and the way that each client we've worked with approaches us and appreciates the work we do. That's what makes us special, not the talent we have. It's the people we do it for.
Right, right. So in that case, then what are your suggestions for people? Because as you said that, I mean, I completely agree. It's on not only the talent, but it's also the way you package it, the way you actually take it out there. Marketing as such also is very important. And a lot of people aren't really successful at that. And, they are supremely talented, but they're not able to get out there. So what is your advice for those people? What are your thoughts on that?
I think first get really good at what you do. Don't be also like it's always important to invest in your own strength. It's not also important not to emulate the next person around you, because that's not sustainable. Find out what your strength is. See what you enjoy doing. So why is it you enjoy shooting weddings or whatever it is you are shooting, and what best can you do within your field to make that process more efficient, to make that process more engaging for you to watch. If you like the film you make, then only somebody else will like it. But if you only can't watch the film you've made, how will anybody else like it? There's always this one thing that I have to like it first and make sure that it's something that I can watch and I can enjoy and I can cry and I can laugh and I can feel. And only when I can feel something and I have that lump in my throat or I have that joy on my face, will I be able to give that to someone else. True?
Right. I understand. Right. But how do you continue to drive that passion? Does it at some point of time, there's some days when you really get up and you're like, okay, come on. I mean, I'm not really feeling up to it. So how do you push yourself on those days to do something? Say, for example, if you've booked a wedding and then you got up and you've not really feeling up to it on that day, and I'm sure it's happened to everybody. How do you
Yeah.
push yourself on that day and then get out there and do it?
See, it's easy for me to preach and say I have a good diet, sleep well, and we're all human beings. We all go for weddings, and you all have days where you're
Absolutely.
off. And that's where your crew come in. That's where I know it's not a one-man job. I can never say I can. I don't think I'd ever be able to go to a wedding and say I'm going to videograph this wedding alone. That wouldn't be possible. I think it takes at least three people to do a wedding, because at some point or the other at the wedding, somebody's arm is going to get tired. If not for an hour, for a whole day, he may fall sick or she may fall sick. So you need those three people there. That extra hand, that extra point of view always comes into play, because we're shooting to edit. So I say this, I give this as an example for breaking down a crew. If a bride is walking in, one camera is going to be on her. At some point of time, you may want a camera behind her or in front of her as well, to get that extra detail and to get that extra cut and to get that extra magic of cinema. But you'd also want the crew to turn around, or you'd want the mother and father's head turning and the audience turning. You'd want to get the entire space if you can. You'd want to get the groom's reaction if you can. All of these require multiple cameras, but if it's in a church, you can't be running around the aisle, go to the mother, then shoot the groom. That's why you need to
Right.
wait because if you do that, also you might miss something that happened in between. And this is where patience comes in. This is where understanding comes in. I do tell people sometimes that it's like shooting wildlife. It's like waiting for that slow leopard, and you wait and you wait and you wait just for that one moment where the look happens, and then you cut. And that's a
Right.
beautiful thing to have.
Right.
A
So,
handy tip for your viewers is that the FS 700 and the FS 7 now that we used to use the FS 700, it was a beautiful camera, but the FS 7 that we use right now and the FS 5 that we use right now, both of them have something called the end trigger. And the end trigger is really cool. It waits for the action to happen and then you press cut. So it kind of ensures you never miss a moment. It's one of our favorite tools to use, but it's a very handy tool. So yeah.
understand. Right. What is the balance that you basically think is good in terms of creativity, shooting, and then editing? Because editing, especially when it comes to videos, is one of the most important things, and you can really transitions and all just bring out the beauty of whatever you're shooting. So, where do you think that balance would be, and how important are those if you would have to give them percentages?
See, I think everyone has a different opinion. I'm more of a post person than a shoot person. So, some people would say, um, if you ask my cinematography, it'd be like obviously the shoot because that's where Hojo creates the magic. If you
Right.
ask me, I feel there are people who shoot way better than me. I don't think the shooting is the important part. I think it's what you do with the shoot. You can get lots of people to help you shoot something beautiful. But I think it's what you do with the shoot before and what you do with the shoot after, how well you prepare yourself and how well you prepare that footage after you've shot is what makes your film amazing. I tell my editors all the time, and we spend hours and days prepping projects, just prepping them, just going through everything, making sure that the prep is right. And if the prep is done right and you've done your homework correctly, then it's very hard for you to get the film wrong. So, and that's where the hard work actually lies, in the editing of the film. The editors are the ones who really make these films work beautifully.
I understand, right. In terms of collaborations, where is it that you really like to, I mean, is there any specific photographer or company or people that you really like to collaborate
Work very
with that
closely
put
with.
that down? Because everybody has certain people that
I
lost your,
kind of lost you there, but from what I
um,
heard, your answer was, I
am,
think it was something about who do I collaborate with or who would I like to collaborate with. We collaborate very closely with
yes,
Joseph Radek. We do a lot of photography with him. I find his photography par excellent. Um, the good thing is that every wedding we film together, the bride has been really happy with the film, and the bride is really happy with the photographs. The families are really happy. The groom is really happy, and I think over the past few years, Joseph and I have shot some amazing weddings that I've really enjoyed. He has a beautiful team. Everyone on his team is amazing, and they're really good people. The understanding of passion, and they understand. Like I see them get upset sometimes because we cross each other's frames, but there's this beautiful
right.
understanding we have of each other and mutual respect we have for each other. Because I do know and that they work really hard, when they're at a wedding. They don't stop shooting for hours. They're on their feet. Shivali and Oscar and all of these guys who work with him. They're so talented and so hardworking. And it's nice because then we also have a good time after the shoot. We have a good time before the shoot. We've been hoping that they come. They come once in a while to our studio. It's only happened a couple of times, but we're hoping it happens more often. Sam and Ekta, people who I've thoroughly enjoyed working with. Again, I think I mentioned them before. We've not worked as often as I'd like to. I think most because they do film and video, most brides book them as well for film and video. So it's very rare for them to do photo and for us to do video. But whenever it has happened, we've had a great time doing it. Like it's been an amazing experience. But Ekta has just so much of energy when she smiles, and Sam's calming and he's tall and he's beautiful and he gives the nicest hugs in the world. And their photographs are beautiful. Like he shot some really nice pictures of just us, some of the crew, and us together, me and Sam and Ekta together. It was nice because after every wedding, after everything, we'd eat together, we'd sit together, we chat, and they're nice. They're genuinely nice people.
Right, right. Uh,
I think
so
it
I'm
takes that niceness to do good work as well. I don't think it's easy for everyone to do it. That's the reason why I think a lot of people are so bitter and so angry and so like. "Rrr." It's just because they're so bad at what they do. It's
how
frustrating. It must
I
be.
mean, how important do you believe in karma, and how important do you think that is?
Oh, I do. Karma is a very important thing, and I've seen it. I've seen it happen to lots of people who've done really bad things, and bad has happened back to them, and that's the circle of life, isn't it? Um, I guess I've seen it happen.
Vishal,
To
your
my own
voice is
parents, I've seen it
breaking
happen.
up. Am I is
Yeah,
your voice is
I think I
completely
lost
breaking
you a
up
little bit.
from. Uh,
Yeah, I think there's a
Temperature, can
bandwidth.
you start from the beginning because yeah, right. So I'm also not able to hear you. I think you're back now. Yeah, I can see you now. Yeah, guys, are we audible? Can you hear
Right.
us?
Yeah. So karma. Yes, you are. Yeah, I mean, karma is a very big thing. I believe in relationship karma. I believe in karma of all sorts. Financial karma. I believe if you steal from somebody, somebody is going to steal from you. Or if you steal from somebody, you will end up losing. Haram ka paisa doesn't go very far. Like haram money doesn't really last anywhere very long. So these things are very true. Um, I think culturally too, we believe in them, don't we?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Okay, guys, I'm just going to take last couple of questions before we end this. But I'm actually not able to see you again, Vishal. Just one second. I'm just going to try and bring you back. Okay. Am I audible, Vishal? Can you hear me? Can you see
Very
me?
clear. Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Okay. So, right. So Canon Sancho guy basically knows. He's asking this question wherein he's saying that it's sometimes hard to understand the creativity of everyone in your team all the time. And how do you do that? Like for example, say for example, for instance, especially when you have a lot of creative people and everybody's throwing in ideas, then how do you push and pull in that respect? I mean, because everybody has their own ideas and they would obviously love for that idea to be incorporated. How do you deal with that?
True. I think there's a hierarchy we have in place. There's senior editors, there's junior editors, and then there's me. So it goes through filters before it comes to me. So many of the junior editors have great ideas. They share them with the seniors. The seniors help them make them better, teach them how to make it faster, teach them how to get to where they want to get to more efficiently. Because the thing is, by the time you're sitting on the editing table at the wedding filmer, it is already established that you're very talented and you're very good. It's very hard to get a seat um, on the table at the wedding filmer. And uh, I'm very proud of the team that we have because every single soul that we have who works with us has worked with us for a long number of years and intends to stay for a long number of years and have grown exponentially with us. And I'd like to see them grow constantly um, within the company. And I think by the time the film comes to me and by the time a scene comes to me, it's already gone through certain filters. So we have quality control measures that are taken into place that make sure that good ideas are exploited well, good ideas are done efficiently. Because I think what most of the new editors struggle with is not the good ideas and the execution of them; it's the good ideas and how efficiently they can be executed. And I think the faster you and the more efficiently you execute an idea, the faster you will grow in your career. So that's what we try and promote, and that's what we try and achieve at the wedding film now.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you so much, Vishal, of course, doing this with us. And
I had a
it's been an
great time.
absolute pleasure. I
It
hope
has
you did
been.
as well because it was really good and I could
I
actually
hope I
see
didn't. I
this.
hope I didn't say anything that would make you retract my statements and apologize on my behalf again.
No, no,
But
don't
yeah,
worry. We won't be doing any of those things. So, but
thank you
yeah,
so
it's
much.
yeah, lovely pleasure having you. And yeah, I mean, I can completely understand the sort of passion that you do, the sort of work that you do with, and all best wishes to you and of course your team as well. I look forward to
Thank you
seeing you
so
soon.
much. I had a really
Great,
nice time. In fact, I feel so much lighter after speaking to you. Thank you.
great. Thank you so much. Okay, bye
Bye bye.
guys.
Bye.